chairwoman of the committee. You think I'm going to gavel you? Before I recognize Mr. Burgess, who will be our next congressman to question, there are two former members of Congress in the room. Pete Olson, who I served with, former Energy and Commerce member, and former Congressman and now Texas Tech Chancellor, Kent Hance, right here in Texas. Welcome, and thank you guys for participating. I'll now go to Mr. Burgess for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for being here. We were late, and I apologize to you for that, but I just have to share something with you. You have a great congressman in August Pfluger. We're sitting in the McAllen Airport at 5:15 this morning, and things start looking bad, like they can sometimes on an unnamed national airline. People are scurrying around, they're closing doors, they're wheeling people off the plane who've already gotten on. August doesn't miss a beat, and well, what he told me was, I got 400 of my closest friends coming to this hearing, and I will not disappoint them. Not I cannot disappoint them, I will not disappoint them. And he gets on his phone, and he arranges not one, but two charter aircraft. I still don't know who's paying for them, August. I hope I'm not. And he gets us, for the most part, gets us all here. We didn't all make it, but it was a big deal. And he literally moved heaven and earth to make sure this hearing came off. So big hand to your Representative Pfluger. And Madam Mayor, in of course, spending the last 8.5 hours in airports, and I apologize I missed your testimony, but I had a chance to read it, reread it while we were waiting. And you know, we had kind of an interesting start to this Congress. It took us 15 votes to elect a speaker. First time that's happened in 100 years. Ken Hance called me at midnight on one of those nights and said, "What the hell are you all doing up there?" But in your testimony, 100 years ago, Santa Rita number 1 came online, and that kind of changed. When you talk about education, particularly for our state, I mean, that changed the curve. Can you tell people who may not know about Santa Rita number 1 a little bit about that event?
Sure. So it was the first well that really brought on the Permian Basin and changed the trajectory of this region. Before that, we were known as the midway station between Fort Worth and El Paso. That's how our name came about. So we became known as Midland, halfway between Fort Worth and El Paso. And whenever we saw Santa Rita number 1 and the development that exploded here quickly thereafter, it's really been an interesting trajectory for our community and for our region, not just for Midland, Texas, but for Odessa and for all of our surrounding communities. And so we have seen the expansion of communities with education, with roads and infrastructure, with workforce training. We have 2 community colleges, one in Odessa and one in Midland, and then we have the University of Texas Permian Basin. And so, so much growth has come in a community largely driven just by oil and gas. And so we have seen some diversification, but for the most part, it was driven by the discovery of this huge basin and the reserves here.
And the creation of the Permanent Endowment Fund for the University of Texas
Absolutely.
and Texas A&M. Not that those universities are important to me, but they are to other people.
Right.
The Permian Strategic Partnership is also a big deal here, and you all have worked very hard to promote that. Can you, in a couple of words, just kind of tell us what the Permian Strategic Partnership has meant?
So the Permian Strategic Partnership is a collection of 20 companies and several others that are joining, and they have pooled their resources voluntarily to solve some of the greatest issues that we face in our community. And so they're addressing healthcare and workforce training, education, I'm going to miss some, affordable housing and transportation issues, infrastructure related to our region. And they're not just addressing that in Midland, but in the Permian Basin at large.
And one of the more exciting things you said is that the technology that is developed here because of the expertise and the investment is exported to other areas, and you all are doing it so well here that the overall carbon footprint of the United States year over year since 2005 has gone down, and it is because of exporting that technology and and Chancellor Hance, I do have to also mention, Representative Peters mentioned the great engineering school you've built out in Lubbock at Texas Tech to create the engineers or to educate the engineers of tomorrow. So that's the sort of stuff that is coming out of West Texas. And the country, the world benefits from that. Mr. Pruitt, let me just ask you, because you spent a lot of time in your testimony talking about, look, the methane problem that Representative Peters addressed is true, it's real, but the longer that gas is stranded here, he calls it fugitive emissions, venting and flaring. All of those are byproducts of the fact that you can't get your product from here to where it ultimately is going to be sold, generating electricity in Dallas or Houston or at an LNG facility off Freeport. So are there things that can be done to hasten that delivery?
And Mr. Pruitt, can you answer rather quickly and so we can move on to the next speaker?
Yes, it's just permitting reform. We need to replace aging pipelines. Kinder Morgan's pipeline was down for 9 months to California. They needed our gas. We couldn't get it there. So we need to replace our aging pipeline infrastructure. We need the permits to do so.
Thank you.
We're going to help you do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Wahlberg.
Thank you. I think it's on. I see the green light.